The rugged coastline stretched endlessly beneath a sky heavy with the promise of rain. Jagged rocks, worn smooth by years of relentless waves, jutted defiantly into the churning sea. Standing tall against the elements was a lighthouse, its whitewashed walls weathered by salt and wind, a sentinel watching over the edge of the world. Beside it, nestled against the rocky outcrop, was a small stone house, its sturdy walls seeming to grow out of the earth itself, as if shaped by the same hands that had carved the cliffs. In that house lived Lila, the lighthouse keeper's daughter, a figure as much a part of the landscape as the sea and sky. Her dark hair, often tangled by the coastal breeze, framed a face etched with quiet resolve and a hint of wistfulness. From her window she could see the lighthouse's powerful beam slicing through the dusk, a steady eye in the gathering gloom. It was a beacon not just for ships, but for all who sought safety in the storm. Lila had grown up in the shadow of the lighthouse, her life intertwined with its rhythms and the moods of the sea. She moved through the stone house and the lighthouse grounds with a familiarity born of years spent listening to the wind's whispered secrets and the sea's ceaseless song. The crashing waves below seemed to echo her own steady heartbeat, a pulse that matched the turning of the lighthouse's great lantern. The lighthouse itself was a fortress of light and stone, rising like a tower of steadfast hope. Its walls bore the scars of countless storms, yet it stood firm, its beacon a constant against the shifting tides. Each evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, its great lamp would ignite, casting a wide sweeping beam across the turbulent waters. For sailors far from shore, it was a symbol of safety, a promise that land was near and guidance was at hand. Lila often found herself drawn to the lighthouse's base, where the sea spray mingled with the scent of moss and salt. She would stand there for long moments, watching the light cut through the encroaching fog, feeling a deep kinship with the place that had been her home since childhood. The wind tugged at her coat and carried the cries of seabirds overhead, their wings beating a steady rhythm against the gray sky. The stone house beside the lighthouse was modest but warm, built to withstand the harsh coastal weather. Its walls held the memories of generations, and within its rooms, Lila had learned the art of resilience. The hearth fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows that danced like the waves outside. On the worn wooden table, weather charts and logbooks lay open, pages filled with careful notes and observations, markers of a life lived in tandem with the sea. Though the house was small, it was filled with the quiet comforts of home. A simple collection of seashells lined the windowsill, souvenirs of long walks along the shore. Thick woolen blankets were folded neatly on a bench, ready to ward off the chill of the night. In the kitchen the scent of fresh bread mingled with the briny air, a reminder that even in solitude, life persisted with gentle grace. Lila's connection to the lighthouse was more than duty. It was a bond woven from years of quiet companionship. The lighthouse was both guardian and friend, its light a steady heartbeat in the darkness. She knew every creak of the spiral staircase, every glint of the Fresnel lens as it caught the fading light. When the weather turned fierce and the sea roared like a wild beast, she found comfort in the lighthouse's steadfast presence, a beacon that refused to be extinguished. The coastline itself was a rugged tapestry of stone and salt, a place where the land met the sea in a perpetual embrace. Seaweed clung to rocks like emerald ribbons, and tide pools held tiny worlds beneath glassy surfaces. Lila had wandered these shores since childhood, learning the language of the waves and the flight of gulls. The sea was a living entity, its tides dictating the rhythm of her days and nights. On mornings when the fog hung low and heavy, the lighthouse's beam would pierce the gray like a silver lance, cutting a path through the mist. Lila would watch from her window, tracing the light's steady rotation, feeling the weight of its promise. It was a light that never faltered, even when storms raged and the world seemed to unravel at the edges. In those moments the lighthouse was a symbol of endurance, a quiet defiance against the chaos of nature. Lila's father had been the keeper before her, a man whose love for the sea was as deep as the ocean itself. Though his health had begun to wane, his presence lingered in the creaking floorboards and the scent of old leather in the study. He had taught her to read the clouds and listen to the wind's whispers, to respect the sea's power and to never underestimate the importance of the light. His hands, once steady and sure, now rested lightly on hers during their rare conversations, but his spirit remained a guiding force. The community beyond the cliffs was small and close-knit, bound by the sea's bounty and the land's harshness. Fishermen's boats bobbed in the distant harbor, their sails like specks against the horizon. Villagers knew the lighthouse as a steadfast friend, a guide through treacherous waters and dark nights. Though Lila's life was largely solitary, the presence of the village was a quiet reassurance, a thread connecting her to a wider world beyond the rocky shore. Even as the days shortened and the winds grew colder, Lila found solace in the patterns of her life. Each morning began with the soft light of dawn filtering through the stone walls, the distant call of seabirds greeting the new day. She would dress quickly against the chill, wrapping herself in wool and leather before stepping outside to tend to the lighthouse. The salt air filled her lungs, sharp and invigorating, as she climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room. From that vantage point, the sea stretched endlessly, a shifting canvas of blues and grays. The horizon was a thin line where sky met water, sometimes blurred by mist, sometimes sharp and clear beneath the morning sun. Lila's hands worked methodically, cleaning the glass and checking the mechanisms that kept the light turning. Each movement was deliberate, a ritual performed with reverence and care. As the day wore on, the lighthouse stood silent and watchful, its presence a constant amidst the changing weather. Lila often returned to the shore, her boots crunching on pebbles as she walked along the water's edge. She gathered driftwood and shells, small treasures that spoke of journeys past and the sea's endless stories. The waves lapped at her feet, cool and persistent, a reminder that life was always in motion. Evenings were reserved for quiet reflection beside the fire, the glow from the hearth mingling with the soft light of the oil lamp. Lila would sit with her journal, recording the day's weather and the lighthouse's performance, her handwriting neat and steady. Outside, the wind would howl through the chimney and rattle the shutters, but inside, there was warmth and peace. In the distance, the lighthouse's beam began to glow, a soft golden arc reaching out across the darkening sea. It moved with certainty, a guardian's eye scanning the horizon for those in need. For Lila, it was a reminder that she was part of something larger, a thread in the fabric of the coast, a keeper of light in a world that could be as unforgiving as it was beautiful. And so the lighthouse stood steadfast and unyielding, a silent witness to the endless dance of sea and sky. Beside it, in the small stone house, Lila lived quietly, her life shaped by the tides and the light, a presence as enduring as the lighthouse itself. Morning light filtered softly through the narrow windows of the stone house, casting pale beams across the worn wooden floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and salt, mingling with the faint aroma of brewing tea. Lila moved quietly, careful not to disturb the fragile stillness that clung to the room like a fragile veil. Her father lay in the small bed near the hearth, his breathing shallow but steady, the lines of age and illness etched deeply into his face. The steady rhythm of his breath was a fragile anchor in the ebbing tide of time. Lila's day began as it always did, with soft footsteps and whispered greetings. She checked the small fire before crossing to the window, peering out toward the lighthouse where the first pale rays of sun touched the whitewashed walls. The tower stood as resolute as ever, its silhouette sharp against the awakening sky, promising safety in a world that could be merciless. Her routine was a delicate balance between care and duty. She prepared a simple breakfast, the warmth of the kitchen a comforting contrast to the chill that clung to the stone walls. Her eyes often drifted to her father, where the steady flicker of the candlelight played upon his features. His hands, once strong and steady, now rested limply beneath the blanket, but the spark of his spirit lingered in the quiet moments they shared. Once her father was settled, Lila set about her tasks. The lighthouse was a living thing, its needs as constant as the tides. She donned her worn coat and wrapped a scarf tight against the biting wind before stepping outside. The sea air was sharp and bracing, carrying the distant cries of gulls and the rhythmic crash of waves against the rocks below. Her boots crunched over the gravel path as she made her way to the towering spiral staircase that wound upward like a ribbon of stone. Climbing the stairs was a ritual in itself, each step a measured beat in the steady cadence of her life. The walls echoed faintly with the memory of footsteps long past, her father's steady climb, the whispered conversations between keeper and sea. At the top, the lantern room awaited, its glass panes fogged with salt and moisture, the heart of the lighthouse's enduring light. Lila began her work with practiced hands, wiping the glass carefully, each stroke revealing the clarity beneath. The great Fresnel lens, a masterpiece of engineering and light, stood at the center, ready to catch the flame and magnify it into a beacon that could pierce the darkest night. She checked the oil reservoir, ensuring it was full and clean, and adjusted the clockwork mechanism that would turn the lamp with unerring precision. Outside, the weather began to shift. Clouds rolled in low and fast, their gray depths swallowing the horizon. Fog crept from the sea, thick and cold, settling over the land like a shroud. The lighthouse's beam would soon be needed to cut through the mist, a steady eye in the obscuring gloom. Lila felt the weight of that responsibility keenly, the knowledge that lives might depend on the strength and clarity of the light she tended. Descending the staircase, the sound of the storm gathering was carried on the wind. Back in the kitchen, she prepared a pot of strong tea, the steam swirling in the dim light. Her fingers moved with quiet efficiency, cleaning the small space, tending to the provisions that would sustain them through the coming nights. The logbook lay open on the table, its pages creased and marked by years of observation and care. Lila took up her pen and began to record the day's weather. The wind's direction and strength, the height and movement of the waves, the shape and color of the clouds. These details were more than mere notes. They were the language of the sea and sky, a map of the unseen forces that shaped her world. Each entry was a thread in the fabric of understanding, a silent dialogue between watcher and elements. Her father's weak voice called softly from the next room, a reminder of the fragile balance she maintained between the needs of the lighthouse and those of the man who had once been its keeper. She moved to his side, offering a gentle smile in the warmth of her hand. Their moments together were quiet but profound, a shared stillness in the midst of the storm's approach. As afternoon waned, the first raindrops began to fall, gentle at first but soon growing insistent. The windows rattled under the increasing wind, and the sea below roared louder, its waves driven higher against the rocks. Lila returned to the lighthouse, checking the mechanisms once more, ensuring the lamp was ready to ignite at dusk. The light was a beacon not only for others but for herself, a symbol of hope and steadfastness amid uncertainty. With night drawing near, the lighthouse's great lamp was lit, and the beam swung out over the dark waters, slicing through the fog like a silver sword. The rotating light cast fleeting shadows on the cliffs and waves, a silent guardian watching for ships lost in the storm. Lila stood by the lantern room's window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the sea's turbulent dance below. Inside, the house was warm and sheltered, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. Lila prepared a simple meal, her movements slow and deliberate. She listened to the wind's howl and the rain's steady drum against the roof, finding comfort in the lighthouse's steady glow beyond the window. The storm was a fierce companion, but the light remained unwavering, a promise that safety was within reach. Later, she returned to the logbook, adding notes about the evening's weather and the light's performance. Each entry was a testament to endurance, a record of vigilance against the night's threats. Her handwriting was careful, the letters flowing with quiet determination. The lighthouse was more than stone and light. It was a living testament to the bond between land and sea, keeper and light. Throughout the night, Lila remained near her father's side, the two of them bound by the fragile thread of life and love. The storm raged outside, but within the walls of their home and the lighthouse, there was a fragile peace. The sea's fury was tempered by the light's steady rotation, a circle of safety cast across the darkened waters. As dawn approached, the storm began to abate, the wind's howl softening to a mournful sigh. The waves, though still restless, lost their sharp edge, rolling gently against the shore. Lila sat by the window watching the light fade with the coming day, a quiet vigil kept for the world she had sworn to protect. Her father's breathing deepened slightly, a brief return to strength that brought a flicker of hope. Lila leaned close, whispering words carried on the sea breeze, promises of care and continuity. The lighthouse, ever watchful, stood silent in the morning light, its beam resting until nightfall, ready to resume its endless duty. In the quiet moments between night and day, Lila found herself caught between the past and the future, the weight of responsibility and the fragile threads of love. Her routine was a delicate dance, balancing the needs of the lighthouse, the sea, and the man who had taught her to understand both. The light was her constant companion, a symbol of hope that endured even as the world shifted and changed. As the sun rose higher, casting gold upon the waves, Lila prepared for the day ahead. The sea was calm once more, but the promise of storms lingered in the shifting clouds. Her hands were steady, her heart resolute. The lighthouse awaited her care, its light a steadfast guide through the uncertainty of the coming days. The fishing village lay nestled in the fold of the coastline, its weathered cottages clustered close together as if seeking warmth in each other's presence. Narrow lanes wound between them, worn smooth by generations of footsteps in salted winds. The scent of brine and frying fish drifted through the air, mingling with the distant clatter of nets being hauled and the low murmur of voices exchanged among neighbors. It was a place shaped by the sea's bounty and the hardships it bore, a community bound by shared toil and quiet resilience. Lila knew the village well, though her visits were infrequent and measured. The people there respected the lighthouse and the solitary figure who tended it. They understood the importance of the beacon, especially when storms closed in and the sea turned treacherous. Occasionally, fishermen brought supplies, fresh bread, salted pork, or bundles of herbs that found their way up the winding path to the stone house beside the lighthouse. These gifts were small tokens of gratitude, acknowledgments of the quiet strength that Lila embodied. Though her days were largely solitary, Lila never truly felt alone. The rhythmic crashing of the waves against the rocky shore provided a constant companion, its steady pulse a reminder of life's enduring flow. Seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries a chorus that rose and fell with the shifting winds. Their presence was a familiar comfort, a living thread woven into the fabric of her existence. She often paused to watch a lone gull riding the updrafts or a pair of cormorants diving beneath the waves, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with practiced ease. The changing seasons marked the passage of time with subtle yet profound shifts. In spring, the cliffs wore a fresh cloak of green, wildflowers blooming in unexpected crevices. The air was sweet with new growth, and the sea's mood softened, its waves gentler against the shore. Lila welcomed these moments, her spirits lifting with the lengthening days and the promise of renewal. She would walk the edges of the cliffs breathing deeply, the scent of salt and earth mingling with the warmth of the sun on her skin. Summer brought a lively hum to the village, the harbor bustling with boats preparing for the day's catch. Children's laughter echoed as they chased each other along the pier, their bare feet splashing in tidal pools. Lila watched from a distance, a faint smile touching her lips as the energy of youth filled the air. She polished the lighthouse's lantern glass more frequently during these months, ensuring the light was clear and bright for the ships that still passed, even as routes shifted and fewer vessels navigated these waters. Autumn arrived with a cooler breeze, turning the leaves to fiery hues that contrasted sharply with the gray stones and ever-changing sea. The village prepared for the lean months ahead. Nets were mended, and stores of preserved food grew. Lila's days became quieter again, the pace slowing as she tended both the lighthouse and her father with steady care. The sea took on a restless edge, waves growing taller, and the wind carrying a sharper bite. Storms were frequent now, their arrival marked by darkening skies and the distant roll of thunder. Winter was a harsh and lonely season, when the village retreated behind closed doors and the sea raged with a fierce, unyielding power. Snow sometimes dusted the cliffs, and ice formed in the sheltered coves. Lila's world contracted to the stone house and the lighthouse, the two structures standing in stark contrast to the wildness outside. Inside, she wrapped herself in thick woolens and kept the fire burning bright, the flickering flames a fragile shield against the cold. The light from the tower cut through the longest nights, a steadfast promise to those who braved the dark. Despite the challenges, Lila found moments of reflection within the solitude. The sea's vastness was both humbling and inspiring, its endless motion a metaphor for her own life's ebb and flow. She would sit by the window in the evenings, watching the lantern's glow turn slowly against the night, contemplating the passage of time and the delicate balance she maintained between duty and hope. The village, though distant, remained a silent presence in her life. News traveled up the cliffs, carried in the voices of visiting fishermen or the occasional traveler seeking shelter. Lila listened carefully to their stories, fragments of a world beyond her rocky home. These exchanges, though brief, reminded her that she was part of a larger whole, a thread woven into the tapestry of coastal life. On clear days, she walked the path down to the village, carrying baskets of herbs or fresh eggs as gifts. The villagers greeted her with nods and smiles, their eyes reflecting respect and understanding. Conversations were sparse but meaningful, often revolving around the sea's temperament, the health of the catch, or the coming weather. It was a language of shared experience, unspoken yet deeply felt. Children, curious and bold, sometimes approached the lighthouse, their small hands tracing the cool stone as Lila invited them to glimpse the world from the lantern room. Their wide eyes and whispered questions brought a spark of joy, a reminder of life's continuity and the promise of new generations. Lila cherished these moments, the fleeting connections that softened the edges of her solitary existence. Throughout the year, the natural world continued its relentless cycle. The seabirds' migrations marked the changing seasons, their departures and returns a rhythm as dependable as the lighthouse's beam. The tides rose and fell, sculpting the shoreline and revealing hidden treasures in the sand and rock pools. Lila learned to read these signs, each shift in wind or wave a message from the sea. The lighthouse itself remained a silent witness to these changes. Its walls absorbed the sun's warmth and the sting of winter's frost, standing firm against the relentless assault of weather and time. Within its lantern room, the great lens caught the light and multiplied it, sending its steady pulse across the dark waters. For the villagers and sailors alike, it was a symbol of certainty in an uncertain world. Lila's bond with the land and sea deepened with each passing season. She found solace in the quiet moments when the world seemed to hold its breath. The stillness before a storm, the soft fall of snow on rocky ledges, the gentle hush of dawn breaking over the water. These were the times when the lighthouse's light felt most sacred, a beacon not just for others but for herself. In the ebb and flow of days, the village and the lighthouse existed in a delicate harmony. The people depended on the sea's gifts and respected its dangers, while the lighthouse stood as a guardian, its light a shield against the unknown. Lila, at the heart of this balance, moved with quiet grace, a keeper of traditions and a witness to the enduring dance of nature. Though the world beyond the cliffs was ever-changing, the rhythms of the village and the lighthouse remained steadfast. Seasons passed, lives unfolded, and the light continued to turn, a steady pulse in the vast, untamed wilderness of sea and sky. In this space Lila found her place, a solitary figure intertwined with the land and water, bound by the enduring call of the coast. The storm had been brewing for days, gathering strength in the gray swell of the sea and the heavy clouds that hung low over the cliffs. The wind had shifted to a fierce howl by evening, carrying salt and rain in sharp, biting gusts that rattled the shutters and sent waves crashing violently against the rocky shore. Lila stood near the lantern room window, watching the furious dance of water and wind, the lighthouse's beam cutting a steady arc through the tempest's veil. As the night deepened, a harsh cry rose above the storm's roar, a faint, desperate sound that carried across the wind and the pounding sea. Lila's heart quickened. She wrapped her coat tighter around her and hurried down the spiral staircase, the wooden steps slippery beneath her worn boots. Outside, the rain lashed at her face, the cold bite of the storm seeping through even the thickest layers. Near the jagged rocks below the lighthouse, something caught her eye, a figure battered and shivering, struggling against the relentless surf. Without hesitation, Lila moved swiftly, her feet finding sure footing on the slick stones as she reached the man just as the waves threatened to pull him under again. Grasping his arm firmly, she hauled him to safety, pulling him away from the water's grasp onto the narrow strip of shore. He was a sailor, his clothes soaked and torn, eyes wide with exhaustion and relief. His breath came in ragged gasps, the cold seeping into his bones. Lila wrapped her coat around him, her hand steady as she guided him back up the path toward the warmth of the stone house and the lighthouse's shelter. The storm raged around them, but within the walls, there was a fragile refuge. Inside, by the fire's glow, the sailor, Tomas, began to thaw, his color returning slowly as Lila fetched blankets and brewed strong tea. His voice was hoarse, but his eyes held a quiet gratitude. Between sips and shivers he told fragments of his tale. A ship caught in the storm, the desperate struggle to stay afloat, and the cruel sea that had thrown him ashore like driftwood. Lila listened with a calm intensity, her own experiences blending with the echoes of his story. She tended to his wounds with practiced hands, cleaning and dressing them carefully. The storm outside seemed to fade into a distant murmur as the warmth of the fire and the quiet companionship filled the room. Over the following days, Tomas's presence became a gentle part of the lighthouse's rhythm. He moved quietly, his strength slowly returning as he helped with the daily tasks, repairing weathered ropes, oiling the mechanisms of the lantern, and gathering firewood from the windswept shore. There was no rush, no intrusion. His presence blended seamlessly into the natural cadence of Lila's life. Their conversations were soft and unhurried, shared over simple meals and stolen moments near the fire. Tomas spoke of distant ports and star-streaked skies, his stories painting pictures of places beyond the horizon. Lila, in turn, shared the language of the sea and the land, the rhythms of the lighthouse and the village that clung to the coastline. The bond that formed between them was subtle, woven from shared silences and the steady work of caring for the light. Tomas's respect for the lighthouse and its keeper was evident in every task he undertook, his hands gentle and sure as he learned the delicate balance required to keep the beacon burning bright. Lila found comfort in his presence, a quiet companionship that did not disturb the fragile harmony of her world. They spent mornings climbing the spiral staircase together, checking the lantern's glass and ensuring the oil was fresh and clean. Tomas marveled at the intricate Fresnel lens, fascinated by the way it captured and multiplied the flame's light. Lila explained the mechanics with a steady voice, her knowledge deep and precise, a testament to years of devotion. Outside, the sea's mood shifted with the passing days, calmer now, its waves rolling gently against the shore. The sun broke through the clouds, casting shafts of light across the wet rocks and sparkling on the water's surface. The village resumed its quiet bustle, fishermen preparing their boats and children playing near the docks. Lila and Tomas walked the narrow path down to the village together, carrying supplies and sharing observations on the weather and the changing tides. Despite the ease of Tomas's presence, Lila remained rooted in her responsibilities. Her care for her father was unwavering, the fragile balance between the demands of the lighthouse and the needs of family, a constant undercurrent in her days. Tomas understood this silently, offering help without expectation, his actions speaking of respect and quiet understanding. In the evenings they sat by the fire, the light from the hearth mingling with the glow of the oil lamp. Conversations drifted from practical matters to stories of stars and birds, of constellations that sailors used to navigate, and of the migrating seabirds that traced the coastline each season. Tomas's knowledge of the skies added a new dimension to Lila's world, his tales weaving seamlessly with the natural rhythm she had long known. Their friendship deepened not through grand gestures, but through the simple acts of shared labor and mutual respect. Each day brought moments of laughter and reflection, a gentle easing of the solitude that had once defined Lila's life. The lighthouse, steadfast and unyielding, stood witness to this quiet unfolding, its light a constant presence in the changing tapestry of their days. The bond between them was like the tide, steady, inevitable, and shaped by the forces around it. Tomas's arrival had not disrupted the delicate balance but had added a new texture, a richness that both embraced without haste. Together, they maintained the lighthouse's tireless vigil, their efforts intertwined with the ceaseless motion of sea and sky. As the weeks passed, the storm that had brought Tomas seemed a distant memory, replaced by the gentle cadence of shared purpose. The lighthouse's beam continued its unbroken circle, casting a path through the night for those at sea, while within its walls, a new rhythm had taken root, a quiet companionship born of survival, respect, and the enduring power of light. The lighthouse stood unwavering beneath a sky streaked with the soft hues of dawn, its white walls glowing faintly in the early light. The sea stretched endlessly beyond, a restless expanse of blues and grays that shifted with the gentle pulse of the tides. The beam of the lantern had long since ceased its nightly sweep, now resting quietly until dusk, when it would once again ignite its steady circle of guidance across the waters. Within the stone house beside the tower, Lila moved with a calm purpose, her days shaped by the rhythms of light and sea. The fragile balance she had maintained since childhood now found new strength in the steady presence of Tomas, whose quiet companionship had woven seamlessly into the fabric of her life. Together they tended the lighthouse with a shared devotion, their efforts a testament to endurance and care. Morning found them side by side in the lantern room, their hands moving in practiced harmony as they polished the great Fresnel lens. The glass gleamed, catching the sun's first rays and scattering them in a delicate dance of light. Tomas adjusted the oil lamp's wick with careful precision, while Lila checked the clockwork mechanism that would turn the lantern through the night. Their work was a ritual, a silent vow to the beacon that never faltered. Outside, the village began to stir, its familiar sounds drifting up the cliffs, boats creaking as sails were unfurled, the distant laughter of children playing near the harbor, and the steady murmur of voices exchanging news and weather reports. The community remained a quiet thread in their lives, a reminder of the wider world beyond the lighthouse's solitary vigil. The seasons continued their steady march. Calm summers gave way to autumn's crisp air, when leaves turned fiery against the gray stones and the sea's edge grew restless. Winter storms tested the lighthouse's strength, their fury met with unyielding light that cut through darkness and tempest alike. Throughout, Lila and Tomas worked in unison, their shared vigilance a bastion against the shifting threats of nature. Evenings were often spent near the fire, the flickering flames casting warm shadows that danced along the walls of the stone house. Conversations flowed easily now, moving from practical concerns to stories of stars and birds, of distant ports and the endless sky. Tomas's knowledge of the heavens brought new perspectives to Lila's world, his tales enriching the shared silence that had grown between them. In the quiet moments, Lila would read aloud from the weather log, her voice steady and clear as she traced the patterns of wind and wave recorded over the years. The pages were a living history, a chronicle of storms weathered and calm days cherished. Tomas listened attentively, his gaze resting on the flickering light, the same light they tended together. The bond between them deepened not through grand declarations but through the simple, enduring acts of care and presence. They moved through their days with a shared rhythm, a harmony born of mutual respect and understanding. The lighthouse, once a solitary beacon, now held a warmth that echoed within its walls, a reflection of the companionship that had taken root. Storms continued to come and go, their fierce arrival marked by dark skies and roaring seas. During these tempests, Lila often climbed to the lantern room alone, facing the howling wind and lashing rain. The light's unwavering circle amidst the chaos was a symbol of resilience, a promise cast across the night. Tomas watched from below, his silent support a steady anchor in the storm's fury. As spring emerged quietly, bringing gentle rains and the soft green of new growth, Tomas returned from a brief journey to the village, his arms laden with small gifts, a bundle of wildflowers, a carved wooden bird, and a book of star charts. The presents were tokens of renewal, symbols of the season's promise and the life they nurtured together. They worked side by side to prepare the lighthouse and stone house for the changing weather, sealing cracks against the damp and polishing every surface until it gleamed. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, the space between words filled with comfortable understanding. The village thrived anew, its children's laughter ringing across the harbor, a joyful counterpoint to the lighthouse's steady glow. Through all the seasons, the lighthouse remained a steadfast presence, its light turning and turning in endless circles. It was a beacon not only for passing ships but for the very essence of life along the coast, a symbol of connection, protection, and hope. The bond between Lila and Tomas embodied this spirit, their shared existence, a quiet testament to the enduring power of light and companionship. The days lengthened and shortened, storms came and passed, and the sea's endless song continued its ceaseless rhythm. Within the lighthouse and the small stone house beside it, life unfolded in a gentle harmony, a dance as old as the land and sea themselves. The light shone on, casting its path across the waters and into the hearts of those who kept its flame alive.